Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most powerful players in India's entire financial world, SEBI.
You know that feeling, right? That knot in your stomach when the market takes a nosedive. You see all that red on the screen, and you can't help but wonder, is anyone actually looking out for me? Is this whole game even fair?
Well, that's exactly where our story begins, because the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI for short, isn't just another government agency. It's the watchdog, the referee, the guardian standing at the very gates of the Indian economy.
So let's really get to know this guardian. To understand just how much power SEBI wields, we have to start with the basics. What is it? And maybe more importantly, why was it even created?
Okay, so SEBI officially came into being back in 1992, and it had one single laser-focused mission. If you read the SEBI Act, it's right there in black and white. Its number one job is to protect the interests of investors. That's it. That's the North Star. Because think about it, without your trust, the market just doesn't work. And that single idea is the foundation for everything, and I mean everything, SEBI does.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It's how SEBI uses its power. It's not just a rulemaker. It's not just an investigator, and it's not just a judge. The incredible thing is, it's all three of those rolled into one powerful body. You can almost picture it as a watchdog with three heads. And this combination is what makes SEBI so formidable. First, it acts like a mini parliament, writing the actual rulebook for the entire stock market. Then it puts on its police hat, investigating anyone who dares to break those rules. And finally, it sits as the judge, handing down orders and penalties to the rule breakers. This all-in-one power lets it move fast and decisively to keep the market safe.
But you know, having that much power means you're going to get challenged. SEBI's authority wasn't just handed to it, it was forged in the fire of some truly epic legal battles that went all the way to the Supreme Court. These showdowns are what really define the SEBI we know today. And this timeline here gives you a bird's-eye view. We're talking about a journey that spans decades, from an early case that gave companies fundamental rights to a massive battle over fundraising and right up to a 2024 ruling that basically gave SEBI a huge vote of confidence. Each one of these cases was a critical test of its strength.
Let's dive into one of the biggest legal dramas in Indian corporate history. Just try to wrap your head around this. A company raises an absolutely mind-boggling 24,000 crore rupees from millions of ordinary people. The company insisted it was all private and above board. But SEBI saw something very, very different.
This was the famous Sahara case. Sahara used some really complex financial products and argued, hey, these aren't stocks or bonds, so SEBI has no say here. But SEBI wasn't fooled. It looked right through the complicated labels and said, nope, this looks like a public issue, it smells like a public issue, it is a public issue. And you know what? The Supreme Court completely agreed, ordering a full refund to investors and setting a massive precedent.
And this quote right here is the golden rule that came out of it. Substance over form. The court basically said, we don't care what you call it, we don't care how you dress it up. If you are taking money from the public, SEBI is in charge, period. This slammed the door on a huge potential loophole and shouted to the entire market that investor protection is non-negotiable.
Now, let's talk about another legal concept that makes SEBI's world so different. So in most criminal cases, right, the prosecutor has to prove intent. They have to show that the person had a guilty mind, or mens rea, as the lawyers call it. But when it comes to the stock market, SEBI plays by a different set of rules.
The Supreme Court made this absolutely crystal clear in the Shriram Mutual Fund case. Its purpose is strict compliance and market discipline. In other words, just breaking the rule is enough. There's no room for, oops, my bad, I didn't mean to. This idea of strict liability puts the health and integrity of the whole market first, making sure everyone, and I mean everyone, plays by the exact same rules.
And that brings us right up to the present day with a very recent, very high-profile test of SEBI's authority. After the Adani-Hindenburg report dropped, the market was absolutely reeling. Allegations were flying everywhere, and a lot of people started asking, can SEBI even handle this? Can we trust them? Some even called for a whole new investigation, completely bypassing SEBI.
But what happened next was huge. The Supreme Court stepped in and gave a massive vote of confidence to SEBI. It flat out rejected the pleas to sideline the regulator, affirming its independence and its expertise. The court's message was clear. SEBI is the expert here, and we will not interfere with its work unless there is absolute, clear-cut evidence that it's failing. This was so important because it ensures the market's main guardian isn't pushed aside right when it's needed the most.
Okay, so we've seen the epic court battles that have shaped SEBI's power. But what does all this mean in the real world? How does that power actually change the way companies in India do business every single day?
At the end of the day, a huge part of SEBI's job is to make sure companies play fair. And that really boils down to these 4 big ideas. Transparency, meaning they have to be honest and open with information. Accountability, meaning the bosses are answerable to their shareholders. Responsibility, which is all about acting ethically. And fairness, which means protecting the small guy, the minority shareholder.
And look, these aren't just nice-sounding suggestions. They are hard-coded into the law. Rules like the LODR regulations are basically the daily operating manual for every single company listed on the stock exchange. It tells them everything from how to report their profits to who can be on their board of directors.
But the regulatory world SEBI lives in goes even beyond just profits and losses. It also shapes how a company sees its role in society. A perfect example of this is something called corporate social responsibility, or CSR, which isn't just a choice anymore. It's the law.
And this law has real teeth. The biggest, most profitable companies are legally required to spend at least 2% of their average profits on social and environmental causes. This is way more than just charity. It's a fundamental shift that embeds the idea that a company's success is directly tied to the well-being of the whole country.
So we've looked at its unique powers, we've seen the landmark legal fights, and we've touched on its impact in corporate boardrooms. Let's pull it all together. What's the big takeaway here? Why does this 3-headed watchdog truly matter so much?
I think this little recap says it all. The courts have confirmed its independence in the Vishal Tiwari case. They expanded its powers to protect you, the investor, in the Sahara case, and they laid down the law on strict corporate accountability in the Shriram case. Each one of these rulings is a critical pillar holding up a stronger, safer, and more trustworthy market for everyone.
Really, what it comes down to is this. SEBI's journey has been the bedrock of trust in India's financial markets. And at the end of the day, that trust is the engine for economic growth and prosperity.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We know a strong regulator is absolutely essential for trust. But the big debate will always be, what's the perfect balance? How do you find that sweet spot between enough control to keep everyone safe and enough freedom to let innovation flourish? That's the billion-dollar question. Thanks so much for joining us.